Let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
别挣扎，这是命中注定。
Hello. This is Adolf. I have with me Krista.
Hello.
And Krista is reviewing Nezha. As always, we'll talk about the 3D element first. Now, I did not watch this movie, so I'm just here to kind of moderate this conversation. So, Krista, take it on. How was the 3D?
The 3D in this, it was just so gorgeous. I loved, the film opens with a scene where you're in the clouds, and just the entire theater was filled with clouds. Immediately I knew this was going to be a good movie, just based off of the atmospherics in the opening scene. And it just it continued with that standard throughout the whole movie, in my opinion.
Okay, and you watched it in IMAX 3D, correct?
Yes, I watched it in IMAX 3D. IMAX 3D does make things slightly deeper than other 3D displays, so that might be one reason why I found the 3D to be so good.
Now, a lot of people don't have the option to watch it in 3D, or if it's only in 3D. So it's just kind of one of those things. It's kind of really hard to either if even have a theater showing it. They may have it, That's the frustrating thing about this movie, is that because it's a movie that's in Chinese and with only English subtitles, it wasn't even dubbed. It didn't get that wide of a release in the US, so it's kind of a hard movie to find. I had to drive 30 minutes out just to be able to see this movie in 3D. So you might not even have this movie in your area, but if you do, I highly recommend you see it. Now, you mentioned subtitles. Subtitles and 3D have a notorious track record. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. How was it here?
Yeah, okay, so subtitles are an iffy thing with 3D because sometimes whoever wrote the subtitles or whoever was in charge of the subtitles doesn't understand the rules of 3D and doesn't understand you have to put the subtitles somewhere within 3D space. But I didn't have a problem with these subtitles. I think whoever did the subtitles knew what they were doing. The subtitles were actually both in Chinese and English, which I found interesting. I didn't have a problem. There was no retinal rivalry or any contradiction with the shots.
All right, so what about the visuals made it so wonderful in 3D?
So there's a lot of color in a lot of these shots. They make good use of atmospherics. There's a really just a gorgeous world that this film built. There's a couple of shots where you see mountains off in the distance, and even the mountains feel like they're in 3D. And there's a lot of magic and mystical things going on, and so the magic effects also have their own presence in the 3D space, and it's really good 3D. It's whoever, the people behind this knew that this was a 3D movie, and they knew the rules of 3D filmmaking, and they made it with that in mind. And so that's why I think it's just so good.
So, there's good pop-out scenes, there's good depth. It's like you're peering into a window and you're seeing everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's animated, it feels like you're there in a little way.
Okay, so you love the 3D?
Oh, the 3D was great.
Okay. Is that it? Or is there anything more you want to add to that?
Oh, yes. This is the kind of film that this is what I love about 3D, and this is what I want all 3D films to be like.
All right. So your final verdict is?
Great. Editor's choice. I love this film. The 3D was great. Everything about it was great.
All right. Let's get to the movie itself. So, what is this movie about?
That's a fascinating question. The main character, Nezha, he has roots in traditional Chinese folklore, and like he was part of the Journey to the West and like other Chinese stories. So there's like a whole historical context to like this film. It's as if, you know, he's kind of a Chinese deity. So there's a lot of religious and historical context that feeds into this movie. In this movie, Nezha is the incarnation of like the demon. They call it the demon pearl, but like he's basically like an evil demon child. And because he's a demon child, like the entire village hates him. And so they like basically they tell the parents like he has to stay within your house, like he can't leave, you have to keep him within the grounds of your manor or whatever. But because Nezha is clever, he is able to sneak out and he torments the village. And because the village doesn't like him, he has a lot of anger issues, and he's like kind of this isolated kid who doesn't really have any friends because he antagonizes all his friends. And meanwhile, there is his opposite, Ah Bing, who is raised by dragons and is himself a dragon, though he takes the form of a human. And Ah Bing is raised with all these expectations about he's the spirit pearl, so he's supposed to be like this good force for the dragons. He's supposed to save the dragons, and like they both have lots of expectations about like what their destiny is going to be, and they eventually come together and they become friends. But because they're opposites, their friendship is kind of rife with tension because they're eventually destined to be enemies.
So for me, I've never really got into anime. I like here and there. Not really into Chinese culture. Not saying I'm against it. I'm just not really been able to be into that. So will I still be able to enjoy Nezha?
Yes, I believe. I think it's just like really good storytelling, even without like the Chinese culture aspect inside of it. Like it's one of those movies you could like really dig deep into and like find all this symbolism you didn't understand on your first or second or third viewing. Like you could watch it over and over again and keep finding new things. But even on a first viewing, it's just very good storytelling, and it establishes the character relationships so well, and like you really feel for these characters and really want them to succeed, and you feel what they feel.
All right, what problems do you have with this movie, if any?
A couple of problems. Like the main problem is that there's like fat jokes throughout the movie, which I found really annoying more than anything, but that's certainly not unique to this movie. There is one time skip that I would have liked them to like focus more on and to like maybe put a montage or something there to fill it out. There's a couple things about the lore that I don't quite understand, but that might be more me not being familiar with the cultural context. But like, for example, Nezha and Ah Bing are like, they're supposed to be 3 years old by the climax of the film, but they're both like walking, talking people, and like so their aging is not the same as human aging, but that's not ever really explained as to why that is. So there's like some functional things about the story that kind of confused me a little, but I got on board pretty quickly.
Okay, so in closing, what are your final thoughts on this movie and your score?
I love this movie. I give it a 10 out of 10. I think if you have any opportunity to see this movie, you should go see it. Even if you don't know that much about Chinese culture, I think you'll still be able to get some sort of benefit from seeing this movie. And maybe it'll make you want to investigate what's all the religious symbolism, what's the cultural backstory here, you know? And even if you don't, it's still a really good movie. It's still really good writing and just storytelling at its finest, in my opinion.
All right. Well, thank you for this review, and thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Before this podcast ends, I want to give a thank you to my patrons. Right now, we have one patron, which is David from Spain, and I want to thank you for your financial support. All right. So that's going to be it for this podcast.
We now have a Patreon, and the link is in the description. Thanks for watching.
And we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, It'll put it everywhere. Just look for us 3D or 2D. And of course, review us on iTunes. And if you want to write us a letter, our email address is email3dortwo d@gmail.com. So that's going to be it. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. Hey, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.